Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Allen Hughes, the director of Dear Mama, which follows the life and legacy of Tupac Shakur and his mother, the Black Panther activist Afeni Shakur. You begin this documentary with an interview where Tupac compares himself to Job in the Bible, and he's done a lot of interviews. What stood out to you about that one in particular, and why did you want to begin the film with that glimpse of him?
I think Tupac was born into a struggle, the struggle, his mother being a Black Panther. I discovered along the way also he's born into a tremendous amount of trauma, inherited trauma from his mother and the movement. And I think that he was aware that he was being tested. His character was being tested. So that's why we opened it with those remarks from him. And that was it.
And this is really a story about Tupac and his mother, Afeni, who has more of her own legacy than some people might realize. Some of her history was certainly new to me. Why did you want to do this documentary now? And why through the lens of his relationship with his mom?
Because I can relate to being raised by a single mother, one, in poverty, two, and my mother was also an activist in the women's rights movement. So I felt I could discover Tupac's journey through his mother's journey. There's this saying, the sins of the father will visit the son, or whatever the saying is. What about the actions and thoughts of the single mother and her children? And I know how my mother's activism, radical activism, affected my brother and I. And I think Afeni's story was just a fresh revelation as well. A lot of women get erased from history, especially women of color. And we discovered along the way there was a lot of stuff that she was actively involved in the Panther movement. And even when she went to trial, the famous Panther 21 case, defending herself, which was a bold decision. A lot of this stuff has been erased from the history books, and I just was not aware of. So it was quite the revelation for this narrative.
And you had a personal relationship with Tupac, not always a pleasant one. That might be an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit? And why did you feel like now you would be the right person to tell this story?
Well, my brother and I, we started our careers with Tupac. His first three music videos were some of our first few music videos that we did. We did three off his debut album, Tupacalypse Now. We all were 19, I think, very passionate, very volatile. And that's why we got along so well. And he was meant to be a supporting role in our first film, Menace to Society. In fact, him signing on to our first film was the reason why it got greenlit. And the relationship had just gotten so volatile that it was hard to maintain it in pre-production. So we had to let him go. And that became quite controversial because it got physical later. But, I think for me, a lot of this has to do with like men now. You'll see Snoop Dogg in the film, who was very close to Tupac, a 50-year-old man now able to reflect back on the thoughts, actions, and mishaps of boys. We were all boys. So my heart is big and I want to understand things. I'm not coming in trying to judge anything, just exploring all these things that happen to us, young filmmakers, young artists, and take a tremendous amount of pride. And also, we were some of Tupac's first image makers. So to come back and complete that journey and find the meaning and purpose in his journey, especially his mother, through his mother, was meaningful for me.
You mentioned Snoop. You have a lot of great interviews, but I fell in love with Aunt Glo.
Yeah.
She was my favorite. Just her stories, the way she speaks, and her humor. What was it like to speak with her and learn from her? What was your moments with her like?
People always ask, how do you tell a great story? I say, start with great characters. And when you meet like so-called civilians, people who are not performers, Tupac's aunt, Glo, her name is Gloria, but we call her Glo. Tupac gave her that nickname Glo, and I think it's appropriate because she's just a great natural storyteller. She has a gift for it. She reminds me of like Richard Pryor coupled with some blues man. And there's a bit of mysticism there too. So, she's Afeni's only sister and Tupac's only aunt. For her to be here in her 70s and step up like that, she was not that in her family. When Afeni was here and Tupac was here, she played the background. But to see her move into that position and meet the moment with poise and humor and sometimes darkness, but always multidimensional and very complex, and very spiritual. And it's just so important to have someone that's a real human being that can actually just black out and just tell the story. She was wonderful.
What was the biggest challenge through the process, in terms of getting to tell the story that you want? I mean, did the estates have disagreements with you on how things were portrayed, or were you guys pretty in unison?
Well, the state definitely had challenges, that there were certain things that they didn't agree with, but everything was a conversation, because they did grant us access to all the writings, the poetry, the music, the multi-tracks. It's really important for me as a filmmaker to have access to the multi-tracks, because I tend to strip them down and score a bit with them, and also take the acapella, and have, my wonderful composers, Atticus, Claudia, and Leo, hearing Tupac's lyrics to the compositions brings us closer to him. I have a rule in the editing room: if grandma don't understand it, it's got to go. So I had to make sure that even this hip hop stuff, that our average grandmother would understand what he was saying. And Afeni as well. There was some spoken word poetry from the early 70s when she got off that case, the Panther 21 trial, and she was out there touring and lecturing. And you see, she was a poet first, and she was a wordsmith first, and a spoken word poet as well. And you see where he got the power of words and story from, and from his mother. But yeah, it was a challenge working with the estate, but they were not the toughest. They were not the toughest part. The toughest part was, there's so many different friends and family, and anyone that knew Tupac felt like they owned Tupac. If there was someone that went to Disneyland with him one day in the 90s, they're writing a book about it. It's like the most important thing that happened to him. So that was difficult, trying to bring so many disparate family members and friends together, because they're outside of the family. There's a lot of fracturing there with the friends and loved ones.
There's also so many different sides of Tupac that someone could have known a totally different Tupac. I love the videos of him when he's young, especially like in high school. He's like a kid in drama class. He's not a gangster. And then this evolution, and there's even people in the documentary that talk about he could go to a country club or the ghetto and fit in wherever he is. What was your experience like in seeing that about him, and the energy that he would bring to any room that he was in?
I mean, first and foremost, what I knew then, I felt then, I know now, is that he's an artist first, before actor, before recording artist. He is wired as an artist and has all the delusions that an artist has, the wonderful alternate reality that artists live in. He doesn't see the world the way so-called normal people see the world. He's not seeing it the way you see it. And I think it's incredibly inspiring for, I think, the youth to see that he's actually not he didn't come up as a gangster. He came up as a performing arts student, a pure artist. And that's the guy I knew, but I also knew the guy that had severe, issues with the father not being there, and the severe issues with displacement issues as well, because his mother, they moved a lot. So when you have issues of displacement like that, you learn to become a chameleon and fit in quite quickly. It's part of one of your coping mechanisms. I'm sorry, excuse me. And you couple that with being an artist and a great storyteller, and you see why it became what it became.
Well, it's such a captivating look at Tupac and his mother. Congratulations on this. Good luck at the upcoming Emmys. Dear Mama is currently streaming on Hulu, and thanks for joining Gold Derby today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.